thank you so much for tuning in to the Aeronautics and Astronautics podcast, where two specialists in aeronautics and astronautics are going to break down everything all about science and all types of complicated things that I definitely understand, and really bring you the latest and greatest in aeronautics. I'm your host, Steven Smart Science, and I'm here with my guest James DeLaurier, who knows quite a little bit about things that fly in the air. Isn't that right, James?
Oh, that's right, Jarrett. Even though the title was aerospace, and I have worked on the space aspect of it a long time ago, I'm really more interested in atmospheric flight.
Oh, yeah, me too. I definitely understand the distinction between those two things that you just said. Luckily, this isn't the whatever the hell I said podcast. This is, in fact, a podcast where I actually kind of know what I'm talking about. This is the Photography Friends podcast, and I'm your host, Jared Poirier, your host, your photographer, whatever you want to call me. And I'm here with another excellent photographer. I call him Jim because when we met, he introduced himself as Jim, but you can call him James out of respect. James DeLaurier is here. Tell us about yourself, man, and tell us how you ended up on this crazy podcast today.
Well, I don't know where to begin. My background is aerospace engineering. I received my bachelor's degree from University of Illinois, and I graduated from Stanford with my PhD. And in the meantime, during the summer, I worked at NASA Ames Research Center on the Apollo program for the moon.
Wow.
Which was, looking back on it now, I realize what a great honor that was. But circumstances were such that I received a job offer from the University of Toronto Institute for Aerospace Studies, and I moved with my family up here in 1974, and I'm Canadian now. I'm very happy to be Canadian.
Well, welcome to the Canada Club, and welcome to the Photographer Club as well. And just to kind of fill everybody in, the way that Jim and I met, we were at the One of a Kind show here in Toronto. I just went. I'm actually a graduate of U of T as well, but we never ran into each other over there. I was doing the more, the softer sciences, I guess, than you. So we weren't in a lot of the same buildings. But yeah, we ran into each other there at the One of the Kind show. I had just gone to shoot some photos and shoot the shit and meet some people, and we did just that, and you saw me with my camera. I saw you with your what is a Rolleiflex or some crazy thing you've got going on.
Yep, there's a Rolleiflex 2.8D, made in the mid 1950s.
Right on, yeah. So we got to talking, and since this is the Photo Friends podcast, I didn't really think about that when I made the name, but I have come to realize that no matter how different people may be, the shared love of photography can really bring people together, and I think we've got a lot of photo friends out there that we just haven't met yet, is my opinion. What do you think about that?
Well, there's a resurgence of interest in film photography. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
You probably don't remember a heck of a lot about the 70s. In fact, you were probably born in the 70s.
I was born in the 90s, brother. So I don't remember much about the 70s. I'd have to ask my parents about that one.
Well, film processing really, really tubed.
Yeah.
You bring your film in, it could have been taken with a Nikon F, and it looked like it came back looking like it was done with an Instamatic. They had pebbles surfaces on the pictures, and the colors would fade. And I didn't like that at all. So I set up my own darkroom. I couldn't do color. I do black and white, which I like, actually.
Yeah.
I'm doing my own black and white photography and developing the negatives and spending a whole day in the room with the enlarger, getting the pictures and prints. And for color, I would just use like Kodachrome because to send it to Kodak, they can't goof that up. So, that's how I operated. But then digital came along. And of course, I embraced digital like everybody else. And I have some good digital cameras. And I've taken some good photos, but somehow or another, there was something about darkroom photography, film
Hmm.
photography that I just found appealing. It's like a craft.
Oh yeah.
It's hard to explain to somebody why you would go through all that trouble, but it isn't trouble for me. It's enjoyment.
Yeah.
And so I got back into film photography, and I found, much to my amazement, that film is still available. It's
Yep.
still being made. Kodak's still making film. Ilford in England is still making film. And for that matter, I used to go to these antique camera shows in Toronto, and I collect old cameras. I just liked old cameras, but I like the kind that I can use. User
Yeah.
collectible sort of thing.
Yeah, not just the ones that are gonna sit on your shelf there. Well, we're gonna get a little bit deeper into film photography here. That's gonna be the topic for the final episode of 2022, if you guys can believe it. Before we can do that, though, I do of course have to thank our sponsor, CloudSpot. Can I go ahead and do that, Jim? Is that all right with you?
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're going to be pretty mad if I don't do it. CloudSpot, ladies and gentlemen, is the easiest way for photographers to deliver and sell their photos online. You can create a beautiful gallery with all the photos that you shot. Super easy for your clients to download. Super easy to integrate sales. People can buy prints and all sorts of stuff right off of the galleries. Really couldn't be simpler. I've been using CloudSpot. I absolutely love it. To be honest, it's the way that I send photos to all of my clients now. And if you are a listener to this podcast, and even if you just listen to this one episode, I'm talking to you, Jim's son, you can save 50% off of a whole year of CloudSpot and impress your clients. So if you want to do that, you can check all of that stuff out. So how did you get? I'm just wondering, before we really get into film and kind of the difference between like film and digital. I wanted to ask, how did you get into photography in the first place? Because, aerospace, aeronautics, blah, blah, blah. Really, I don't see immediately the link between that and photography, but I'm totally willing to be proven wrong on that.
Well, actually, it was just an interest of mine. I had my first real camera in 1970, which was a Yashica D,
Mm-hmm.
twin lens reflex. And we were living in Europe at that time. I was doing my postdoc in Belgium. And when we traveled around, I wanted to take quality pictures. The Instamatic was okay, but it just isn't okay enough when you really want to have a good photograph. So
Mm-hmm.
I learned about aperture and shutter and stuff. So the motivation was to take better pictures.
Yeah, fair enough. And yeah, but how did you even get into it in the first place? Like, where did your love of photography come from? Like, what was the bug that bit you that got you into that? Like, was it being into films or being into some other form of art or something like that?
No, it was just having accurate documentation of stuff,
Okay.
people, and projects I worked on, taking pictures of my model airplanes and
Oh, really?
you know,
Okay.
that kind of thing. And I wanted good quality photographs.
Right.
But the process itself was interesting, and the cameras themselves as artifacts, technological artifacts, was interesting. And I was really happy with my twin lens reflex, the Yashica,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when the bug bit.
Yeah. So more of a practical thing in that case, right?
It was, but it's become more of a passion now.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's how it goes a lot of the time, right? And that to bring it up again, since we are kind of on that topic of space and whatnot, that was one of the interesting things that came out, one of the epiphanies, I guess you could say, that came out of like the Apollo program, Gemini program, and all of that. They brought cameras on those missions for the purposes of documenting the mission, like practical scientific reasons. And it turned out that, these pictures of Earth from space, which no one had ever seen before, were responsible for like a huge paradigm shift and stuff like that. So it's very interesting how those two areas of photography kind of overlap, eh?
Well, that's right. I think anybody who goes up to the moon and picks up that Hasselblad that was used is going to have enough money to retire for the rest of their lives because the Hasselblad would take a 6 by 6 negative,
Mm-hmm.
which just no matter what anybody says, it just comes out better than 35 millimeter.
Hmm.
It's just a beautiful image. And, you saw that Earthrise, that amazing photograph that was taken. But
Certainly.
they brought the film packs back. They left the camera behind to
Yeah,
keep.
there's two of them, two Hasselblads right now on the moon, sitting up there.
Oh, man.
That's the long game with this podcast, you know. So once we get really successful with the podcast, we're going to that'll be a great episode. That'll be a great YouTube video, going to the moon. Getting those cameras. I wonder if they still work. Like maybe they do. I don't know. They're pretty well made.
Well, I don't know. They've been bombarded by micro dust all this time. They're probably
Yeah,
just something that would be in a museum.
might be tough, but there's only really one way to find out. So
Yep, that's right.
so yeah, you mentioned the difference between digital and film, and really preferring that film approach over the digital thing. I'm a digital photographer, like we've discussed in person. I've never really shot film. In fact, as a matter of fact, until you were the first person to ever explain to me light metering and like how that actually works. Up until that explanation that you gave me at One of a Kind show, I had never understood like how you would determine without being able to look through that viewfinder and get like an digital image of what's gonna appear, right, and change your ISO and stuff like that, change your aperture. Why decide to go film, especially since like digital has gotten so good now and so convenient? You just throw it on your computer, open up a program, you can make it black and white, you can make it orange, blue, green, whatever the hell you want, change the contrast, everything. Why still stick with that film thing? Like, what is it about film that you truly love?
I still do digital
Yeah.
for my work.
Mm-hmm.
I have a wind tunnel in my basement where I've been doing experiments.
Yeah, who doesn't have that?
Well, I figure someday it'll be a selling point for the house. Hardwood floors, two-car garage, fireplace, wind tunnel. I mean,
Yeah.
but no, it's it's a sizable wind tunnel. I have a very patient wife, and I've been doing airfoil tests
Wow.
on low-speed airfoils, and I also been doing some tests on airship configurations. But so when I take pictures that I'm going to incorporate into a PowerPoint presentation for my clients, of course, naturally, I use the digital camera. Or if I'm going out and I want something lightweight to carry with me, and I want to take pictures, say at the X, or something that involves a lot of color,
Mm-hmm.
something that I have to take a picture quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The digital is the one to do. And I could see why a digital was so appealing, because photo processing was hit or miss. I mean, finally, I found one good place on Elm Street. It was called Elpro,
Mm-hmm.
and they knew how to give you a good image. And even when I was doing some work with Kevlar, we were building a wing using Kevlar. I'd bring in a
Wow.
sample of the Kevlar, and they would look at the color and they would match the color with the
No
print.
way.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, they were
Wow.
great. But
Wow.
otherwise, these other places that, it was just waiting for disappointment. So now digital sidesteps all of that, and you get a good picture with a good camera, and you can adjust it on Photoshop, and, that's super. But film, that's a whole different story. Uh, you have to have a lot more self-discipline.
Mm-hmm.
You can't bang off 1,000 shots. You got
Yeah. There's no
well,
there's no burst mode.
no, no, not at all. Um, so you have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do what Henri Cartier-Bresson said. Look for the decisive moment,
Mm.
and take your shot. And I discipline myself even more, really, because I like medium format. The camera you saw me with,
That's right. Yeah.
you only have 12 exposures. That's
Wow.
that's it. And
And are they like like what's the, is it 4x4, 5x5?
they're 6x6, just
Six
like the
by
Hassel.
six.
Yeah,
Oh
just
wow,
like a
okay.
Hasselblad.
Moon
By
ready.
six, we're talking about centimeters here. 6x6 is nice. You get some of the quality of large format, but also the convenience of a smaller format. I just love it.
Yeah, a lot of resolution, and the process of, well, here let's go through the process. I think that would be an interesting thing to unpack, and starting at that thing of well, starting at the start, right? You got to get film for the camera. How are you doing that?
I'm mostly buying my film from a B&H
Okay,
in New
on the
York.
internet.
Yes, that's right. Their service is super, and what they have available for darkroom work and film and so forth is just super. I mean, it's really good. I've tried to buy my film from Henry's, and they have a little plastic box and behind the counter that has some film in it, but it's kind of hit or miss.
Right. Yeah. And if you're finding if you get that B&H, it's nice and consistent and ships pretty fast.
Oh, very fast.
Really.
Oh, they're great.
Yeah. So once you've got your film, you obviously put that in your camera, and then the whole thing that's really different about film photography, like the actual process, other than the development, which we'll talk about, but the light metering thing. Like, can you explain how that actually works? Like, when you press that button on your light meter, what does it actually tell you, and like, how do you work with that? How do you implement that?
What you have to always remember, keep it in the forefront of your mind, is that what I had said to you back when we met at the One of a Kind show is that amateurs think about equipment,
Mm-hmm.
professionals think about cost,
Mm-hmm.
and masters think about light. You
Yeah.
always think
I
about
love
light.
I love that.
And with the light meter, it's what you try to do is take an average, get up close if you can
Mm-hmm.
to the subject. The ideal way is to have a card that's 18% gray, and hold that card in front of the subject and take
Mm.
the light reading off of that. That will give you the full spectrum of exposure values from you'll cover from the dark to the light, uh, the exposure number that Ansel Adams talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't always do that. So your subject can only be so patient. So you kind of hope that you're catching an average.
Yeah. Especially if it's a dog or a little kid, I'd sit there all day for you. But
Yeah, you were a very good subject. But yeah, so you take your exposure reading, and then you can translate that to a shutter speed and an aperture. Of course, with the twin lens reflex, the you don't have the mirror slapping around inside like you do with a single lens reflex. So you
right.
can you can hold it steady at a 30th of a second. I mean, it's like holding a sizable object that isn't very light. So
Mm-hmm.
it's steady. But if you're wide open, you don't have a great depth of field.
Right.
I took a picture of a family where the father and the mother were just fine in focus, but the little kid standing in front of them was fuzzy. So that's one of the drawbacks of a twin lens reflex. The,
Right.
the
Right.
the
Right.
focal length is like 80 millimeters.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Some people just rock that f4 in every situation, and then they're always safe. No matter
Well,
what.
the ideal is like the smartphones. They they almost have an infinite depth of field.
Yeah, yeah, they do. But then you're getting, not no subject separation, no bokeh, anything like that. That's why I always kind of, when people say, "Oh, you can use smartphone," like, yeah, sure you can, but like, there's certain things that you're missing out. So when you actually hit that light meter, does it show you literally like what your shutter should be? Like it tells you the exact number, what your shutter should be. Is that how it works?
Well, it depends on the camera I'm using.
Okay.
I have a Rolleiflex T. So what you do on that is you take the exposure value reading. This is like maybe 14.
Mm.
And then you have this little lever on the side you set to 14. And then it gives you all the options you
Oh
want
wow.
for shutter speed and aperture. But the
Okay.
camera that you saw, um, the light meter also on the dial on the top gave me options of shutter speed and aperture. And I
Okay.
chose the combination.
Yeah, cool. Okay, I kind of get how that works. And then with ISO, I mean, this is going to sound like a very obvious question to you, but people who have only ever shot digital, this is going to kind of blow their minds. You're stuck at an ISO, right?
Yeah, that's right. I can't vary it. It depends on the film I put in.
That's right. Yeah.
I always use ISO 400.
Okay, okay. Yeah. So that's
It
kind of almost in the middle of a good acceptable range, right?
Yeah, it's not fine grained,
Hmm.
but if I was using that ISO 400 with a 35 millimeter camera, if you started enlarging a little bit too much, say like a 8 by 10, you definitely see the grain. But with a bigger negative, like I get from a medium format camera, the grain is like pretty smooth.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. You should be fine at that level of ISO. But yeah, it's just completely different than the digital approach where all you do is spin that wheel and you can go up to whatever 12,000.
Yeah, I know.
Your photo's going to be grainy as hell, but you can pretty much shoot in the dark if you really want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
Sony's great for that.
oh yeah, for sure. Actually, last night I mentioned I shot a concert last night, and then on my way home, I just had my camera walking home. Decided to risk it a little bit. It was raining, so I pulled my camera out. I was pretty careful with it, and I got some really cool photos. Like I can shoot especially with the everything being soaking, like the whole street being soaking wet and the reflections. I'll post some of those up on the Instagram so you guys can check that out. Yeah, that is one thing about digital that I don't know, film can't quite compete with on that level, right? But it's
You
one thing.
probably could, but you'd have to exert some effort and not worry about getting your camera wet.
Yeah.
Uh, but
Pro-
what I have a Sony digital camera. It's a little one.
oh, do you? I was gonna ask. Yeah, what is the digital camera that you use? Because you mentioned your film cameras.
Yeah, it's the RX 100
Okay.
Mark
Okay.
II.
Okay. Okay.
It's nice. It's a real sweetheart. It's titanium. It has the Zeiss lens, and I've taken some great shots with it. I remember at the X at night, we were on that sort of like ski lift type thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I rocking back and forth, and I just took some shots from it, and they turned out really well.
Mm-hmm.
I could never do that with my Rolleiflex, that's for sure. And another thing is that one time there was a dark alley right across from Barbarian Steakhouse in on Elm Street. This dark alley, you couldn't see anything in it, and just for laughs, I aimed the camera at the dark alley and took a picture,
Yeah.
and the picture came out. It showed everything that was in the alley.
Wow. Crazy, eh?
Yeah, you can't
Like,
lose. It's a good museum camera.
yeah, and yeah, it looks pretty decent. I'm actually checking it out here. 20 megapixels, like that's pretty good, man.
Yeah, that's a
And
nice sensor, nice post processing.
4K video as well, so that's pretty sweet. And it's got a Zeiss lens on it, and that's pretty
Mhm.
cool, man. Yeah, and you know that Jim's a serious photographer because he actually knows how to say that. pronounced pronounced it perfectly, man. What's this thing sticking out on the top of it? On the like, is that like a pop up flash on the
Yeah, there's a
right there?
pop up flash.
Okay, okay, that's pretty cool. Yeah, pretty practical, honestly. Oh, and you can zoom the lens right out, and you've got yeah, like kind of a variable aperture, but it looks like you can go to what, like a 2.8
Hmm.
in some spots. So yeah, that's pretty decent. Yeah.
Well, 2.8 is plenty with that camera because, like you say, you can crank up the ISO pretty high.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you can get beautiful photos with that, man. Yeah, let's get into the actual film processing part, right? So like you said, you've got options when it comes to that. You can bring it into the shop, but then you're kind of at the mercy of whoever the tech is who's developing that, and you're at the mercy of whatever system they have. And like you're saying, there can be a lot of issues with consistency and really getting the photo that you want. So what you've opted to do is develop your own, correct?
Yeah, I have a little dark room in the basement
Mm-hmm. Cool, cool.
along
And
with the wind tunnel.
this is quite the basement. It's got a dark room. For some reason, I'm picturing that there's like a train that runs through it, so you can get so that you can get
Not
through
quite
there.
at that level yet.
Maybe one day. With the Canadian funding, it's a little bit harder to do some more of these ambitious projects. But we'll get there eventually. Maybe once they listen to this podcast, we can probably we'll convince Trudeau. He'll send you the cash. We'll get that train built. Yeah. The process of actually working in the dark room? Like you mentioned that's kind of an involved thing, and quite the process there. So, but you also mentioned that you enjoy it, and that you find it kind of meditative. So do you want to break that down, like how it actually works for the listeners, from taking out that film, and what do you do next? You've got the film out of your camera, you're standing there, you're scared, you're shaking.
If I'm doing that, I better not be doing it.
No, that's what I'm saying. When you do your first one. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to describe it, but your listeners are going to say, "Why is this guy doing that?"
Well, you can tell them out. You can tell them after, yeah.
But well, with the most people, when they think of film photography, if they know about it at all, they assume it's like 35 millimeter, where you rewind the film back into the cassette. The 120 film that I use on my twin lens reflexes is different. It goes from one spool to the next, and it's paper backed. So after shot number 12, I have this crank on the side, and I keep winding it until it winds it onto the upper spool. Okay, so I'm in the dark room. I open up the camera. I take the film out, and if I'm not going to process it right away, there's a little sticky label you can keep it from unraveling, and it says exposed.
You have that option, to not do it right away. Is there like a time that it expires or something, or you wait forever?
Well, I mean, you want to do it fairly soon. I've had old film but I keep it in a small fridge in the basement, so it stays preserved. And the real purists freeze their film, which essentially makes it forever.
Wow,
you
interesting.
just have to be sure to let it thaw out before you use it. But okay, now
and everyone looks real cold in your photos.
Yeah, well, the Andre expedition, that balloon that crashed in the North Pole, and everybody perished.
Wow.
Decades later, they found the glass plates,
right,
from the cameras.
Wow.
And we're able to retrieve the images from those. So yeah.
How cool is that, man? Like, that is some cool stuff for sure.
Well, anyway, so okay. At this point, after I take the film on, I'm going to take care of business. I take out my developing tank. I have a developing tank that's a circular plastic thing, and it has a reel that you put in the middle.
Okay.
So I turn off the lights in the dark room. I'm in pitch black. I can't see anything, so I have to make sure everything is at hand. I know where it is. My scissors, the developing tank, the reel, the film, the cup of coffee. All set. Take off my Apple Watch because there's a glow from it. I don't want that. So
wow. So you really, you have to be that careful, eh?
Oh, you have to be absolutely pitch dark. So anyway, then I trim the edge. I start unrolling the film, and I'm real careful to distinguish between the paper backing and the film itself. So when I encounter the film, I trim the corners a little bit so it can go on the reel smoothly. And then I feed it onto the reel. It's a little bit of a complicated process with 120 because you're peeling the paper away at the same time. And finally, you reach the end where the film has been attached to the paper by tape. And you take your scissors and hopefully snip it close enough to the tape that you're not cutting into an image. Okay, now the reel has the film on it. You put the reel into the tank, and then you put the light-proof top on top, screw it on, and then you're ready for business. Then you can turn your lights back on. That's the only time the dark room has to be dark.
Yeah, so once you have it in the tank, and the tank is filled with chemicals that you've also purchased from like B&H?
Well, not yet. It's
okay.
I just leave the tank, set it aside, and then I start pouring the chemicals out. I have these beakers. For 120 film, I have to use half a liter of chemicals for each. So I have one beaker that's developer, another beaker that's stop bath, which stops the development, a third beaker which is hypo, which fixes the image, and then there's another beaker which is hypo eliminator, because you don't want to have any trace of hypo on your negatives. They'll start turning brown, So if you want to make them archival, you go through that process.
Wow.
And the developer, I get that from B&H. It's Ilford ID11, and it's really, really a nice developer. I understand. I use it. Never lets me down. But I belong to one of these Facebook groups that is into film developing,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, these people try all sorts of stuff. There's a film developer based on coffee called Caffinel, you know,
Wow.
and there's something else that sounds like Rodinel.
See, that
Uh,
that coffee one probably just happened. The guy, like you said, he's got everything in there. He's got his cup of coffee. Oops, you fucking poured that in.
yeah, well, I
Oh, it
mean,
looks great.
it's good that people find it entertaining, but they don't seem to be so interested in good quality photographs. They're taking pictures of, I don't know, brick walls and trying out these different development techniques.
Yeah.
And to me, I want to make my film count. So I go with the standard way of going about it. So
Yeah. You
so
like you
anyway,
said, you only have 12 in there, so
exactly.
yeah.
The last step, I wash it. The last step is to wash it for like 10 minutes, because if you use hypo eliminator, you don't have to do it for a half hour. And then I take it out and I plunge it into one last container that contains something called photo flow, which is sort of kind of like a soapy solution. And then I take the film off the reel. Oh boy, this is the moment of truth. Do I have pictures in here? Do they look good?
Or did
And
I waste a lot of time and money?
yeah, exactly. Is the Zen kind of bent a little bit? But
Mm.
anyway, I take it off and I hang it. I have these clips. There's one clip hanging off the ceiling, and another clip that's weighted that I put on the bottom. And the photo flow just uh, allows it to dry smoothly without any water spots. And then I very, very carefully leave the dark room and leave well enough alone, because I don't want to be stirring up any dust.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fanatic about dust. And you have to leave it at least overnight. I mean, it'll look dry in maybe like a half an hour,
Right.
but that emulsion hasn't had time to harden.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you let the emulsion harden. You just have to be patient.
Yeah, kind of like painting, right? It looks like it's hard, but then if you start messing around with it, you're going to cause yourself a lot of headaches.
Yeah, or walking on wet cement. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, uh, so the next day, I cut the film into segments. I have this binder which has these plastic sheets that are archival type plastic. In other words, they're not going to, start turning into something else and sticking to the negatives.
Right.
And so there's like 3 images per strip. So I get four strips altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's where I vary from what I used to do. I used to spend all day in the dark room with my enlarger, printing these things, and that was very time consuming. It was interesting. You got your radio going, playing classical 96 or something, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and there's a certain pleasure to it, but I just I don't have the time for that. So
Right.
so I scanned them. There's a negative scanner option on my Epson V600.
Easy.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and I scanned them, and then with these digital images, I can work with them a little bit with Photoshop.
Oh, true. Yeah, you can do that type of post processing, and then obviously share them with people. If you shot photos of people, then yeah, it's pretty simple to once you have them scanned in, you send them, and the resolution is still all there, right? Like 100% of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
Cool.
some people may say, "Well, heck, they're digital images. So what have you done?"
Yeah.
But the thing is that I used to uh, at my enlarger, I had filters, different color filters, which would give me different contrasts.
Yeah.
And then I'd be burning and dodging with these little things on the ends of wires, little circles of paper, adjusting the exposure in certain parts of the print.
Right. Wow.
So I'm just doing the same thing now with Photoshop.
Yeah, I was gonna say they have a little tool in Photoshop, I believe, called the old burn and dodge there. So yeah, and you know what my next question is gonna be, right? It's a pretty obvious question. Like, why? Why exclamation mark?
It's like that saying about riding a Harley Davidson. If you had to ask why, you don't understand. You know,
Yeah.
there's there's just something about it. I enjoy it. I'm usually pretty busy with a lot of other things, so this is my entertainment, you might say.
And do you find that it's like meditative for you? Like when you're doing it, you're not thinking about anything else and you're just in the zone?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to pay attention. There's an old saying that it's never too late to bugger up, and so you have to really pay attention.
Yeah, that's true in a lot of things in life. In marriage, that's definitely true. but uh, but when it comes to film photography, yeah, I could imagine that being true, right? And there's, with the little Lightroom program here on my computer, there's going back. I can press undo, but with that type of thing, there's not quite an undo, but I definitely understand that. There's certain things that I do that I find highly meditative, and I get in the zone of doing it. Uh, Working out, exercise is definitely one of them. I'd say for me, shooting photos, like when I'm on set shooting photos, I am literally not thinking about anything else.
Hmm.
And this is the longer I've been doing this stuff, and the more photographers that I've met by doing this podcast, the more I've realized a lot of us share a little bit of the old attention deficit disorder. I don't know if that's true in your case, but a lot of the people who I've met who are into photography have that. And to have something to do, where you truly have to focus, you truly have to be in the zone. This podcast is another example, right? I'll sound like an idiot if I start trying to talk about a bunch of different random shit and not stay focused about on the topic of photography here. So I fully understand that, to be honest with you. Like, I'm saying why exclamation mark, but actually, as a photographer myself and as an artist, like I fully understand why you're into that, and the results are different. Like, it is appreciably different what you are able to come out with. It looks like a photo that was shot on film, right? And that's the same for movies. Like, basically ever since I've been born, films have been shot digitally, right? Like ever since The Matrix or whatever. But people still shoot on film, Tarantino and a few other people, I think Nolan as well, still bother to shoot on film. And, for everything that digital offers you, there's something special. There's something, even looking at your photography, that there is something special about film. There's a certain look to it, and there's like I don't know, analogness isn't a word, but something like that. There's like a naturalness to it in a way, right?
There is something about a film photograph that I guess you could probably replicate a lot of that with digital, but um, to me, it's I don't know. To me, it's an authentic photograph, and obviously, digital is an authentic photograph too. But it's old authentic, I suppose. And there's one other thing about film that I've discovered,
Mm.
uh, which I had never had anticipated, is that it's a real conversation starter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. True. Like, yeah, and it kind of adds extra meaning to the photo, right? Because you know how much work went into it. Like, that is definitely part of it. Like, it means more. And also, there's something to be said for the fact that it makes you selective, and it makes you think a lot more about what you're doing, right? You only have 12 photos, and therefore you have to be a lot more thoughtful about, like you said, waiting for that perfect moment, capturing it, right?
Yeah, you can't do grab shots as easy with film
Mm-hmm.
as you could with, especially with the kind of cameras I'm using.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the first things I tell people is like, okay, be patient.
Hmm.
And I explain what I'm doing. But when I was at the One of a Kind show, people kept saying, "Oh, what is that thing?" And I have to explain it, what kind of camera it is and
Yeah.
what it does. And finally, I just would say, "Hey, would you like me to take a picture of you?" And they'd say, "Yeah." So, I'd take a picture and I'd give them my card and say, "Well, if you want me to send a copy to you, just write to me and I'll do that." And
Yeah.
I got some great shots in Montreal, a few weeks ago, and I was on Rue St. Paul, and I was just sitting, sort of leaning up against the building while Susan went shopping, my wife, and this lady came by with a little dog. It was a Boston Terrier, and I said, "Oh, a Boston Terrier." And she turned around and said, "Well, yes. Do you know about Boston Terriers?" I said, "Well, yeah. My family always had one."
Oh,
We had a
wow.
nice conversation, and uh, finally, I said, "Hey, would you like me to take a picture of you with your Boston Terrier?" And she picked it up, and I got the greatest shots. The love for her little dog just
Aw.
positively radiated out of that picture, and so that's the kind of images I've been getting with my old twin lens reflex, and I'm happy about it. I
Man,
later sent her a copy of the picture.
yeah, if it's something that you can use to relate to other people and bring people together, then, that's definitely a beautiful thing and something that we definitely need, especially since everyone's on their damn telephones all the time. Looking at Instagram or whatever, looking at cute dogs on Instagram when you could be shooting photos of cute dogs in real life, you're missing out. So yeah, man, I like I said, I totally understand why you do it, and it absolutely is. It absolutely is something special and a conversation starter, as you said. I'm gonna let you get out of here, Jim. I know you're a busy guy. You've got photos to develop. You've got your wind tunnel. I have one more question for you here, though, and it's a bit of a heavy one. I think it's gonna get us to the end of the podcast if you're ready.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna hop aboard this last question here, and it's going to sail us clearly to the end of the episode. Here we go. Jim, photography, is it a science or is it an art?
It's science in the service of art.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot. There's I think it maybe started as a science. I think that may be the case, right? I think the initial photographers, man, if I could remember his name right now, there's Daguerre,
Yeah.
and there's Nicéphore Niepce, the French guy. I think
Hmm.
they're both French. Their big thing was just, can we mix chemicals together with certain things and create, an impression on a piece of metal of light, right? There was no real artistic reasoning behind that, artistic impetus behind that. I think maybe at the very start of things, it was purely a science. But I really like the way that you put it, a science in the service of art. Like, I definitely feel that I feel a little bit like a scientist. I'll be honest. That's probably the closest I get. Is when I know exactly when I look at the scene and I know exactly what I need to do in my camera, right? And I'm in control of all these little variables, my ISO, my aperture, my shutter speed, blah blah blah, right? As a person who, I'm mostly an artist, I would have to say. I identify as an artist in a lot of ways, but that's when I kind of can fire up the math side of my brain. And I've never really been a big math guy, or a big. I like my pop science. I understand science to a certain degree. I've got some science books up here, man. I've got some Richard Dawkins books and some crap like that. I don't know. So what else do I have? Oh, I've got a Neil deGrasse Tyson over here. So stuff like that. I get into my science a little bit, but I do love that. I do love that photography is that place for me to overlap those things, right? And yeah, obviously you're a scientist. And you consider yourself an artist as well, right?
Well, I'm not immune to art. Back in high school, I used to. I lived in a south suburb of Chicago,
Yeah.
and every Saturday I would go up on the Illinois Central Railroad train and go to the Art Institute of Chicago. I took courses there on the weekends
Yeah.
on art, working with pastels and watercolors and
Oh, cool.
oils. And then I would spend the rest of the day just hanging out in the Art Institute, looking at the impressionist paintings and uh, just enjoying my day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, much like you do in the dark room and creating your art there. And, there is this distinction. And I think it's kind of, in a way, this conversation and just kind of meeting you and hanging out kind of changed my mind about a couple things. There is that distinction that people make between, scientists and artists, or it's often referred to as like left brain people, right? More creative people, and then like right brain, more like analytical people, right? And I think like our shared, mutual love of photography, our passion for photography kind of highlights the fact that that division isn't really as real as a lot of people might believe that it is, right?
Well, engineering is creation. Um, Science is discovery.
Mm-hmm.
But engineering, you create something that had never existed before.
Wow. Yeah.
And to say that engineering is applied science is like saying that fine art is applied pigment chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing has been aircraft, flight vehicles.
Yeah.
And I've worked on a variety of different types of aircraft. And I spend a lot of my time either standing alongside a runway or standing in an open field watching stuff fly or try to fly. And I was recently involved, my last two graduate students, extraordinary students, we were dedicated to making a successful human-powered flapping wing airplane.
Whoa.
And it was successful. This was the first successful human-powered ornithopter. That's what a
Wow.
flapping wing airplane is, and it was just beautiful, Jarrett. It was just beautiful. It was early. The sun was just rising. The aircraft was there waiting to try to fly. Uh, the wind was blowing in its cables, singing. The aircraft was singing in anticipation of flight, and it was brought towed into the air. And then my student, uh, Todd Reinhardt, was working like crazy to flap the wings, and it flew. It flew, and it was so beautiful. It was art.
Hmm. Yeah, and creation as well.
Absolutely.
Wow. Cool, man. Well, I think we have our answer for that one. It's been an amazing time having you on the show here, Jim. Honestly, couldn't have picked a better guest for the last episode. I think it was a great chat. I think in terms of inspiration, we got lots of that. We got lots to think about, and some practical stuff as well. If anyone wants to get into film photography and start playing around with that, I think they'll have the inspiration and also some of the tools and some of the knowledge that they need to do that. So thank you so much for joining us here on the show.
Oh, it's been a great pleasure, Jarrett. And if anybody wants to see that ornithopter, it's hanging up in the Canadian Aviation and Space Museum.
In Ottawa?
Yeah.
Oh, so they got to go to Ottawa for that. But there's other stuff. They got a good Scotch bar there as well. You can try a lot of different Scotches. So go to Ottawa, check that out. Drink some Scotch, while you're there. Maybe stop by the Parliament and say, you know what, there's this guy, James DeLaurier. He's going to need a little bit more funding for what he's working on in the basement there. So we'll try to get that hooked up. So people can find that, and if people want to check out more about you, more of your work, is there a particular, even maybe check out some of your photos? Is there maybe a place where they can do that?
No, I don't have them posted.
Oh, well, fair enough. But if people want to learn more about you and your work, even in aeronautics and stuff like that, just search your name on the internet. It's probably a good place to start.
If anybody wants to see any of my pictures, just let me know. I'll be happy to share them.
Cool. People can send you an email or whatever. There you go. If you want to check out this show, we do post a lot of stuff. We do all that social media bullshit. We've got the Instagram, photo_friends_pod, the Jared Poirier YouTube channel. We're gonna post this up there. Anyone can find it, no matter how tech savvy or not you are. If you guys want to help out the podcast, you can donate to our Patreon. But what really would help the show that you can do for free, for 100% for free. If you use Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can drop a review for the podcast. And you can check out our CloudSpot link for 50% off. And Jim, I hate to do this to you, but we always close the show with something random. I don't know how great you are with improv, but I'm gonna put that in your lap.
All right.
Some words of wisdom, or just a something random for the people.
Follow your dreams. You only have one life to live. Make the most of it. If you like something and if you're good at something, you'll be successful at it. I was told not to get into atmospheric flight because space was the future. I said, forget it. I'm interested in atmospheric flight. So that worked out for me. And if you have a talent and a passion is what makes all the difference in life, pursue that passion.